This is why Jesus is so fascinating, because Jesus doesn't run into all of the limitations of the schematic that we do, because he has this link to his Father that lets him move outside of space and time, even inside of the Gospels. I'll give you an example. How does Jesus move outside of space and time? We already talked about how Jesus moves outside of gravity. I mean, Jesus decides to get from point A, which is on one side of the water, to point B, which is on the other side of the water, and the boats are too slow, so you just take off walking. That's a good way to defy gravity. Jesus just walks right across the top of that water. But he also has that ability to sort of defy space and time. I say that he defies space or time because remember in John chapter 2, Jesus turns the water to wine with simply the word. He just tells them, go fill those 6 water pots of stone, take out the water. What happens is as they drink the water, it has turned to wine. That's a process that takes a long time from raindrop to wine. You don't even have to visit a winery to believe that it's going to take you a while to get from raindrop to finished product. Jesus speeds it up in just a moment, because at the moment, Christ Jesus steps outside of the schematic of time and prospers that water to become wine. The same thing happens in space in John chapter 4, 2 chapters later, where Jesus heals the nobleman's son from a distance. The nobleman says, my son is sick at home, and Jesus speaks the word and heals from far away. He doesn't run to his house and touch him. He doesn't make sure he has an appointment. There's no ground to be spit on. All of the things that because sometimes Jesus does work within whatever confines are in front of him, but sometimes he moves outside of time. I bring those up because what you'll find as you watch those Gospels unfurl is you'll find a fascination with seeing Jesus operate outside of what are the limitations of the schematic, because the schematic doesn't tell you the whole story. So when you take a look at the world and you watch the news, or you see the neighbor, or you see the technology, or you see the economy, it's a transitory glimpse of the world around you. But it's not your source. It's not who you are. It's just where you live. Learning who you are, learning your source, learning where you come from, and therefore what you might be able to do while you're here. That's the beauty of living. That's what lets us color outside the lines. That's where true art begins to happen. That's where true poetry begins. That's where the true music of life begins to happen. Not because we've just figured out how to float from point A to point B. And now I'm being figurative, of course, being a bit metaphoric, but go with me. We figured out that going from point A to point B isn't always a boat ride. Sometimes it's water walking. But sometimes getting to the wine goblet is not the same journey everyone else has. Sometimes it's water to wine. Sometimes the healing is a spoken word. Sometimes the healing is a participatory miracle in which you take a mud pie and go wash your eyes in the pool of Siloam. But as you watch Jesus do all that, he just busts outside those schematics. He continues to sort of live outside of that. I like to think about your education, okay? My undergrad work was in business. My master's work was in theology. In between the undergrad work and the theology work, or in the middle of all of that, I was in ministry. I was in ministry long before, even before college, and then through college. And then I remember going to business school, getting a business degree, continuing in ministry. I was in pastoral ministry. You're sort of working your way that religious rung of pastoral ministry. And I remember learning a lot of things, a lot of concepts and economic concepts and accounting concepts and terminology and stuff that you're supposed to do and stuff that's supposed to work. And when my brother and I bought into a couple of businesses, we relocated and we ran a few businesses for a couple of years as I was still in active ministry. And then our roads ended up taking us in divergent paths, and so we had to end up selling those businesses. I remember being in the middle of that, and there were so many things that would happen day to day in the business environment that were not in business school, that you didn't talk about in your ethics class, and you didn't talk about in your accounting class, and you didn't talk about in econ, and you did all, and you never, because it was people. People are the wild card, because you can't determine what they're going to do next, or what they're going to say, or how they're going to respond, or what's going to happen. The economy's a wild card. Your local government's a wild card. The person that's in the building next to you is a wild card. And all you really have are a set of principles on how you should deal with them, but you don't have any experience on how you should deal with them. I kind of look at business schools like a schematic for business. It's not the actual business, it's just the idea of what it's supposed to be like. And then you get into business, and the business school stuff kind of helped, but it doesn't really run a business. To do that, you have to sort of get boots on the ground. If I think of the schematic of this earth, I've started to think of it in those terms. It's really the world as it's presented to you, but it's not everything that's going on behind the scenes. It can't prepare you for the times you got to go left, the times you got to go right. It can't prepare you for the encounters you're going to have. Not even watching Jesus can fully prepare you for exactly what you're going to go through, but you might be able to use how he went through it to help you in what you go through. So you might encounter someone that Jesus didn't encounter in the Gospels, but every one of Jesus' encounters in the Gospels might inform how you would deal with that if you paid attention to how Jesus did it. And what is important to me about all of that is the transitory nature, the fact that everything doesn't fall within a certain set of limits, but that everything around you is moving and growing. And it's not as if we don't try to grab a hold of it, but it's learning to grab hold of it loosely, identifying that it is not our source and it is not the basis of our faith or our reality. Because if we hold on tightly to whatever's happening in this transitory schematic of the world, in the world outside of us, we miss the chance to listen to the sound of the Spirit that tells us to go left when the schematic in front of us told us we have to go right.